Hey guys, welcome back to Teaching Freedom. I am your co-host, Chris Sinog, here with Scott McEwen. And today we have our first special guest. Pretty exciting. We're going to be talking about teaching freedom with the author of the upcoming book, Guts, Greatness Under Tremendous Stress. He is a best-selling author of First, Fast, and Fearless. And he is a brother of mine, a compadre, fellow Navy SEAL, retired Lieutenant Commander Ed Hiner. Welcome to the show, Ed.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, awesome. So, Scott, you brought Ed in here. You had an idea.
Yeah, I'm responsible. I never had him frisked either on the way in. He didn't look like he was carrying anything. But
you made sure he had his pants on, so that was good.
Yeah, I wanted to have Ed in, and I had read his book and did a blurb for it because I felt it was important, and it really is important to me to introduce our audience to the concepts that Ed puts in Guts. But even beyond that, I wanted to go over Ed's background and what he's doing now with our youth. And I think some of the lessons that are in the book Guts are so important to the development of our youth. And I think for us to teach freedom, ultimately, our youth must understand that that is a very precious and a very special thing. And if they don't undertake to defend that freedom, and I'm not talking about taking up arms like you guys did to go into the SEAL teams, as much as defend the freedom on a daily basis from all kinds of situations that are out there where that freedom could be taken, including their schools. We see now that a lot of indoctrination is going on in schools. A lot of socialism is being taught in schools and things of that nature. And I'm not talking about defiance. I'm just talking about people saying, look, wait a minute. I don't have to think that way. Just because you're the teacher up there teaching socialism doesn't mean I have to adopt those rules and things like that. And I felt like, that Ed's work and his writing, and especially in Guts, really kind of embodies that concept and everything else. So, Ed, on your level, what were you trying to achieve when you wrote Guts, and what was your biggest motivation for the book as far as why you wanted to get that message out there?
Well, let's see. It first started really with myself. Once I retired a few years back, it took me about 4 years to really hit bottom on this, if you would. So I started using a lot of these concepts as I went back to what I used to do. I was struggling like a lot of veterans do, and I started developing these concepts off of what I was doing in my own life. And then as it grew and grew and grew, and then McGraw Hill, I was actually working on another project. And I said, hey, I'm going to stop doing that, and I'm going to switch over to this. And that was a fight. But I'm like, it's a lot of things to do with the book is about fear and motivation, how to manufacture motivation. I needed to manufacture it in myself, right? And how to accomplish and overcome your fears, deal with your fears. And that it started with me. So the whole book starts off basically, here's my story. Here's why I'm writing these concepts. And I went back. See, I was lucky enough to be the training officer 3 times in the SEAL teams at each level, at a BUDS level, which is a basic level, and then a pre-deployment training level, and then at the whole force level, the basic and advanced. And one of the things I was tasked with near the end of my career was to actually start extracting what it is that we do in the SEAL teams. How do we train people? Because we make the soup. We just don't know the ingredients. We just know we put some ingredients in there and it made. So we were trying to really figure out what's critical, what's essential, and what's enhancing to our training, our basic training, because our basic is 58 weeks. It's a long time. It takes 2.5 years to get a SEAL trained and ready for his first deployment. So we wanted to see if we could shrink that number down a little bit. So we had to figure out exactly what we did, and we didn't know exactly what we did. So we started extracting these kind of principles I did from the SEAL teams to say, this is actually what we do. This is important. This is not important. So
give me an idea, I guess of those, if you will, boiled down concepts that you're talking about, what it is you were trying to train. Give our listeners an idea of what it is essentially you boiled these down to.
Well, let's take the first concept. I think the first concept we learn at BUDS, SEAL training, basic underwater demolition SEAL, is accountability. And it's critical for people to understand accountability, because accountability is the ownership of the outcome, right? And we preach to the students, the outcome happens to you, right? If you're on a mission and something goes wrong, it's not your fault. it still happens to you, right? So when we first get bud students, and it's kind of a funny thing, and I'll use politically correct terms, but the student has an opportunity. You say, did you get whatever done? Because we give a student way too many tasks, no time to do it on purpose. See how they prioritize, see how they get creative and innovative. So there's 3 responses a student can have. 2 responses and one excuse, as we call it. It's kind of a funny joke. It's like, did you get your things done? Yes, no. And then I'll be very polite here. I messed up. That's it. That's your excuse. So what that does, and we found that once you do this over a period of time, it starts to break people from excuses, because excuses are always tied to failures. So we start to break their mindset away from that excuse. And now they understand, they have extreme ownership of the outcome. And now they become very innovative, right? We know that bud students are sly. They become crafty. That's what you want a special operator to be. You don't want them thinking like everyone else. You want them to be, outside that box, or asymmetrical, if you will. And that's where we start to break that, as you get, hey, it's your mission. So accountability, and one of the things the Guts talks about right up front, it's got to be talked about.
Yeah, let me just jump in there. You look at my sign over there. This is one of my sayings that I came up with. I love acronyms, but I use teams. And number 1 on there, T stands for take responsibility. You've got to encourage others, ask for help, master your job, because so many people like to point the finger at somebody else when they're not taking care of their own job. And then, of course, the last one, sacrifice for the team.
Master your job. I love that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. And so in Guts, obviously accountability is a central core theme.
Yeah.
In the thing, and I guess extrapolating that into the concept that we're talking about here, isn't that what we need in our society? I mean, really, at the end of the day, all these kids out there, if you will, blaming someone else, blaming all these other people for their troubles, blaming the system, blaming the cops, blaming, whoever they can out there. I mean, why don't you take accountability for what you got going on in your own communities and your own areas? And America as a whole, I think, could learn from that one concept. If that was it, that one concept would do a hell of a lot to help this society, in my humble opinion.
Well, I think that's spot on. That is an American trait. If you look at from how we were developed, that is an American trait. Self-reliance is what that boils down to. When you're accountable, you understand this is my life. I'm not going to outsource it. And we talk a lot, I talk about Guts a lot about that, is people get in the habit to outsource to the government, outsource to a doctor, outsource to a teacher, outsource to an attorney, whatever it is. They outsource the outcome of their life to someone else or something else. And that is, that's where we create victims. And that's where we create people that are tied to the government. That's where we create people that, feel like they'll never, excel in this world, that the odds are against them so much that they'll never do anything. And the more we perpetuate that, the more we're going to get at the same.
Right. What did you find in Guts was your second, if you will, most important concept you discussed? And I guess it would probably be tied back to the teams as well.
Well, one of the things I do when I'm training people in this is I think it's very important as far as just being a good human being, citizen, American, whatever you can call it. But being a good human being is we have people develop ethos and character. In Guts, I talk a lot about, at the very end, I get into it, and I will have to say, my editor said, and a 60-some-year-old dude said that was the best closing chapter he's ever read in a book. Because I think the way we structure this is when someone understands certain concepts, accountability, how to train their mind and create manufacture motivation and discipline, then they start to get into, okay, now that you understand these things, now you have to understand what character means. And we have, when I work with a lot of kids, I have students actually develop their own. And it's a very powerful kind of moment when a person like, hey, this is my life. This is who I will be by design. Not someone else gave it to me. Not someone tells me how I should be. I design it. And most people, when they really come down and think about this and beat these concepts up, they come down to about the same thing.
And I think it's important. Maybe this is a good time to introduce that to the listener and viewer. Is that Ed works with a group at the San Pasquale Academy, and a group that of guys that help to train, let's just say, at-risk youth that have dealt with some things that maybe have put them in a position where they had to go to to this place and go to school. And you guys are there to kind of do your own version of training, if you will, on these kids. And I find it really inspiring to hear about some of the training and some of the reactions that they have, because these concepts that we're talking about in Guts, you're really kind of incorporating these into your training with these youth.
Right.
And tell me, I think the listener would be interested to hear how you've seen these kids take that on. In other words, how these kids that have been kicked around, beat down, foster kids, things of that nature, had some tough times in their life, how they've reacted to that concept.
Okay. Well, first let me go how we started. Actually, part of my own personal ethos when I got out of combat was, I kind of made a point in my mind that I was going to one time in my life help kids, because I think for most guys that are downrange, that's probably one of the toughest things to see. Everything else you expect in the world, but you see kids get hurt and see them suffer, it's not a good thing. So, and it's decided a year and a half ago, instead of waiting until, whenever, I was going to help them. And I linked up with the Courts and Juvenile System, the executive director, pitched in for about 4.5 hours. And I said, I'm doing this out of pocket. I want to help some kids. And I think San Pasqual Academy is a foster youth high school. It's an awesome campus. It's a beautiful place. Kids that have no home, they come there and they go to high school there. They live there on campus with one parent in the house with them per 10 kids. So they've had a hard road. I said, I want to start there. If you can, because that's the kids that actually need it. So the kids, I've done 3 major camps with them. One was 2 months long, one was 2 weeks long, and the other was 2 weeks long. And the input that they brought to the class and the adjustments they've made and all the things they've done in their life since then has shown us that this is powerful stuff. It's so powerful that actually the kids wrote a document to the staff, and they all signed it. And this is how we want our training and our classrooms to be, because we're very interactive. We let the kids flow with it. We also engage them in the process of what we're doing. And we also built an ethos for the school. It took about a year to do. We built an ethos with all the entities that was involved, the government, the nonprofit, and we brought the kids in. And the kids actually have, fingerprints on their own ethos. So, so far it's been good.
Yeah, that ethos, you brought it up earlier, and having each kid make their own ethos. And I think it's critical for everybody, whether you're a child or an adult, military, civilian. And the importance of an ethos is it's like a written document about who you are, and having it written down and the ability to go back to it. And when you need to make a decision in your life, look through your ethos and go, is this part of who I am? If it is, great. Then that's along your path. If it's not written down. That's not who you want to be. Don't make that decision.
That's beautiful. I mean, that's right. And you made a good point there. Write it down. It's like a constitution. Imagine if they would have never written that down.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. And words matter. I don't know if you know, in our SEAL ethos, it was a battle. It took about 5 days to do, with 55 different operators after 6 months of collecting data. One word was discussed, and it was fought over. And that word was a destroy or defeat. All day it was a discussion, right? Destroy says one thing in your mind, defeat says another. And so words matter. And it's kind of like the Constitution, words matter, right? I mean,
yeah, well, hopefully they matter. We'll see what happens with our government moving forward. Seems like a big part of our government doesn't think the Constitution matters anymore.
That's right, they don't.
Yeah, which is another thing that obviously when you teach freedom, you must teach the fact that is an essential part of our government, is the fact that we do have a constitution, we do have a republic, and that we run on a certain set of principles. And even if the voting populace wants to vote those rights away, the Constitution of the Republic says, thou shalt not. It's not a matter of, that's the difference between a republic and a, quote, democracy per se, is a republic says you must act under this body of rules. All men, are created equal, have the right to pursue happiness, things of this nature, that these are out there, and so I think that concept is very important, and I would totally agree. So I guess moving back into this, the idea of Guts and your training, what were the other, if you will, central core themes to the training and to these concepts that you've put in Guts that you feel the reader really wants to get out of this book?
Well, we teach them how everybody talks about discipline. We know we need to have discipline. We know we need to have motivation. But these kids, when you're talking to a kid, that's had 15 years stripped from his life, and we first of all tell them how to restructure their story, right? The first 15 years are taken from you. You're not a victim. You were victimized. And the next 80 or 70, whatever it is yours to own. And the way you tell your story in your mind, because what happens in the mind, I'm not a white-collar scholar. I'm a blue-collar scholar, right? Is the way you do it in your mind, the words that you use creates thoughts, and those thoughts create emotions, and those emotions create actions, right? It's just a triggering effect. So the more someone tells a pathetic story of their life, oh, I was a victim. No, you weren't a victim. Once they realize, look, you paint this story differently. This is your strength. This is the power. Everybody knows. I mean, most team guys messed up, right? Most SEALs, you come into SEAL training, most of them have had a serious adversity. So we let them know that, look, this is a gift to you. The greatest people in the world usually came from hard knocks, right? I mean, some of the hardest stories, most successful people, because they had to be able to chameleon. They had to be able to make an adjustment. So we teach them that. We teach them the language. You got to control your language and how to do that, and then control what you see and how you think. Those things is just to create that discipline and how to use the body. It sounds strange, but how to, I say how to twist the body to mold the mind. Now, we don't get out with logs and do all that kind of stuff with them, but we learn, we teach them how the body works, how sleep, eating, fitness, being out in the physical world, right? How that shifts your mind, and how certain, we even do a little science, how certain neurotransmitters changes the way you think and feel, and how to create those neurotransmitters, which is how you start to generate motivation.
Yeah, I think going back to what you're talking about with SEALs generally have come from struggling backgrounds in some way or the other, and both you and I were instructors at one point, and can attest to the Olympic level swimmer who shows up at Buds and everyone goes, oh, he's gonna fly right through training. Yeah, it's gonna be so easy for him. He's the first guy that quits, because once he has to swim harder than he's ever swam before and needs to make the decision, am I going to drown or quit? They quit. Yeah. And
they've never had setbacks.
Right.
They've been great at their Olympic sport, but you're like,
and good on them.
Good on you.
Nothing against them, but yeah, you need to know what struggle is like to be able to succeed.
That's interesting too. I got a funny anecdote here, if you will, breaking the train of thought is you talk about adverse backgrounds of Navy SEALs. Ed and I both know an individual by the name of Drago.
The same one I deployed with.
Excuse me, Chris knows as well. But
just for police reasons, I do not know him.
But Drago for me is you talk about an adverse background moving into the Navy SEALs. The guy was a prisoner of the communists in Poland,
in the Gulag.
Couldn't speak any English when he got to this country.
Still can't.
Still can't very well.
We made him a calm guy.
But this guy joins the SEALs, and he's known. I mean, in the SEALs, is a pretty hardcore dude. I mean, the bottom line is that Drago's not any soft dude by any means. But by the time he got to the SEALs, he'd been beat down harder than anybody I think I've ever heard of. And when he got there, he's like, "That's no big deal." Like they put me through this training, but it's like the Russians, the communists, they beat me more than the SEALs did, so it wasn't that big a deal to him.
But as hard as he has got one of the biggest hearts.
Oh
yeah,
great man. And we're gonna have him on the show because he's one of the funniest guys.
Well, he and his wife run
just
the
listening
SEAL
to
Fund.
him talk.
Yeah. They run the SEAL Fund, a great group.
Great
Navy SEALs Fund.
I want to throw definitely out there, if you're looking at a group to donate to or look to donate to that do a good job, Navy SEAL Fund is a great group, and Drago and his wife, who's an Air Force Academy graduate, Rachel, are both great people, and they do a great job with that group. So if we can promote any charities during our show, I'd love to do so. But just shows you the adversity, of bringing somebody in like that. And there's some stories out there, and on Drago that we'll go into one day that are so hilarious. I mean, so absolutely, disjointed, as far as the reality is concerned. But I bring one to mind. This is pre-SEALs. And Drago was working as a bouncer at a club in Florida. I believe it was Florida. And it was when he first got here and he could barely speak English. And he was basically at a very raucous kind of roadhouse kind of place. And so they'd had some fights the night before, and Drago had thrown some people out and whatever else. And so one of the guys was found outside with his tongue safety pinned to his cheek, lying in the gutter with his face down. And the manager of the club looks at Drago and he says, well, what happened here? Did you guys have a fight last night and there was a guy out there? He's like, yes, of course. He says, why was this guy found with a safety pin through his tongue and his cheek? He's like, well, he's bleed to death. This is medical procedure. I felt like it's better that he have his tongue not swallow it, and he's able to bleed out, out of his mouth without choking on it. And the guy's like, safety pin his tongue to his cheek. He's like, yes, this is common where I come from. It's not common here.
It's common here. Yeah, we learned that too. We try not to use it, but
that's it. But I was like, but the reaction of this guy to Drago is like classic. He's like, of course, I was just trying to give medical procedures.
That's his big heart right there.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. After he probably caused the injuries. But anyway, going back to your teachings and your experience with your book with Guts and with the kids, what would be your other, if you will, concept towards this academy that you try and teach these kids?
Well, we teach them how to find how to create their own passion, how to create their own interest in life. Because a lot of these kids, they have no idea about the world, right? I mean, they've never been exposed to anything except horrible stuff. We expose them. One of our goals is also to start having them exposed to public speaking. We do public speaking to get them to get over the fear, but we want to have successful people from every kind of walk of life to come in and speak to them. We did this, and my partner actually did this at an academy he helped start, Entrepreneur Academy. Every Friday, that's how I met him. A guest would come on, a guest and speak to the class or to the school. And it was, one day it'd be a lawyer, one day a plumber, one day it'd be a congressperson, one day, expose these kids to possibilities so they can actually dream. And then, we have, you love acronyms. I love acronyms too. We have a SEALS goal setting process that we deal with them. And it's like, okay, now you can see that there are things out there in the world that you can do and want to do and help them build step by step how to get there and teach them how to build goals. It sounds, to us, it probably sounds simple, but we work from X, I say X to A, but, because the X is on the target, right? That's how we work in a mission planning. You go, okay, actions at the objective here on the target. That's the X. Now we tell the kids, how do you plan backwards and make this all fit? Because it's overwhelming to these kids. You're like, no, it's not overwhelming. I didn't jump out of a plane at 30,000 feet, 40 below zero with 200 pounds of equipment on at night. The first time I got in a helicopter or an aircraft, right? We would have died. Right. So, we by doing so step by step, you start to create fear inoculation. And it's, we use a lot of different tools to do that. But yeah, we also expose these kids to different things, which is, I think, critical.
Yeah. One thing you talked about is helping them find their passion.
Yeah.
And when I teach people anything, one of the first things I have them do is go through a process where they learn their why.
Yeah.
So why are, in my case, why are you learning to shoot? Why do you want to learn how to shoot?
Yeah.
Because if you don't know your why, and say you set your alarm clock to go off at 6 a.m. to get up to do some dry fire training or work on your grip strength or whatever it is, you're going to hit your snooze button if you don't have a why, because in that moment, that's more comfortable and that's easier. And people, as humans, we are designed to take the easy way out. It's nothing wrong with us. That's right. It's actually a survival technique, but if you know your why and hey, the reason I'm going to get up at 6 a.m. to train is because I want to protect my family. That's right. And I love my family and I want to make sure that I can spend time with them and watch them grow, whatever it is. That's going to get you out of bed.
That's right. That's a good point. It's not just, my why's, I just want to be a better shooter. Okay. Right. No, but your why is something that really drives you.
Yeah. I do a thing, I give an example of why did I start this business? And you are going to start off with, I need to make money.
Yeah.
Okay. Sure. Well, why do you need to make money? Well, because, I quit the SEAL teams. I retired. Why'd you quit the SEAL teams and retired? Because I realized my sons were growing up without a father there and I wanted to be there with them. Why is that important? Well, because I grew up without a father.
The 5 whys.
Yeah. And okay. Yeah. And you just keep asking why and why. And in the end, my why is, it's because I love them.
Yeah.
And that's powerful.
That's the 5 whys. We use that as kind of keep getting to it to the point you get to the love, right? It's going to come to a love. And actually, my final chapter in Guts, I talk about agape love. that unconditional kind of love, and that drives people. It really does. When you get
Why don't
to
you go over that right now? Sounds like a good time.
I don't want to ruin the whole book, but no, I talk about it. I have a story that I tell, and it just was one of those, there was epiphany moments in your life where, I was in combat. I was getting ready to go in, and it was a tough target. We were flying straight inside this compound, hitting it. It was coming out of the helicopters, getting after it, and I was petrified. I was just like, oh my God, I was going to throw up. And it was a long story, and then certain words from a helicopter pilot triggered me, and then I kind of just shifted my focus, from really what we've learned all our lives in SEAL training is the others focus. And I teach leadership. We teach mom, mission, others, me. That's how you make decisions. But I realized, holy crap, I'm in my own mind, and I'm in charge of all these souls out here. And that triggered me. I was like, man, from that moment, it clicked on me, and I was, that fear turned into total exhilaration. It was an incredible moment. There's just those kind of moments you learn, and it was driven by that unconditional love I think you have, and I call it Agape Love. Is religious people call it Agape. Is that for your brothers, and that's what I think that means. You might not even like some of the people, right? Necessarily, your personalities might not. Right. Hash out, but somehow you find a deep, meaningful love for
it's that struggle that you did together. The whole,
That's right.
The whole purpose of buds is to see who's gonna stay with you. So whether you like some of the guys on your team or not, get along with them or not, they're going to take a bullet for you.
That's right.
And they know the same of you, and that's what makes us so successful.
That's right. Yeah, that's something to see when you see it. You feel it, and you're like, wow. I was impressed with them. Maybe I was impressed with a lot of Army, Marines, Air Force, people just willing to do anything. It just surprised me. We have actually Americans willing to do that. It used to shock me.
Shout out to all the veterans. Yesterday was Veterans Day.
Right.
Thank you for your service.
Shout out to you as well.
Thank you for your service.
Yeah. So, I find that that concept of explanation for the SEAL teams, to me, to be one of the most fascinating parts of your guys', if you will, brotherhood. And I've had the opportunity after writing American Sniper to know, SEALs at every level, from admirals to if you will, to E1s, whatever, E2s, E3s, E4s, every, and some guys are busted back.
That's what I'm saying.
Many times like Drago that never get beyond.
He's an E4 like 6 times.
Whatever, So, across the board, I can say that everybody knows the other guy, even if they've never met him, because they know that he's been through what you've been through, and therefore can be trusted at that level. At that level of doing it. And that, to me, as a cohesive force, as a fighting force, is so important. And Ed and I are working on some concepts right now of some stuff on some prosecutions that have taken place recently in the SEALs and things of that nature. And we've been talking about some books and how debilitating that process is to the teams and to the organization, if you will, because you've got this dichotomy, and we've got this group of guys out there that are asked to do these tasks, and some of whom have been doing it for 5, 6, 7, 8 deployments. A huge amount of time.
Some of them 19 years at this point.
Yeah, and so we've been at war now. The United States has been at war now for 19 years. Since 2001, and some of these guys have been doing it that entire period of time. Now, at that juncture, the United States has basically asked a huge amount from those individuals, and those individuals, some of those individuals will be changed, and they will be forever changed. And there's no way you come back from 19 years of war without being changed. I saw this with Chris Kyle.
Oh, yeah.
We kind of depicted it in the book and the movie a little bit, but definitely in the man, I knew that there was never any going back. There was getting better. There was coming out of some holes, some dark, deep holes that he was in, but there was never, ever going to be a situation where you were going to be the same as you were before. And so, that training helps you, but I think that, as far as the sacrifice is concerned, when you get to that point of sacrifice, a lot of these men and women have sacrificed a huge amount.
Yeah, and you talked about the prosecution of, our men and women overseas, and people looking back and armchair quarterbacking.
Oh yeah, a lot of
what happened downrange, and that's going to affect them as well. It's going to affect the teams and how we're able to operate, but it's going to affect our country and our ability to protect ourselves. And it's the same thing that's happening with law enforcement here in the States. and people, looking back and saying, oh, why don't they teach them to shoot him in the leg? I don't know.
Well, that's that we have a lot of what I'd call combat addiction going on. I think a lot of our guys we've seen it, and I'll just bring it up here. When Eddie Gallagher, I didn't know him, and a lot of people know this story about Eddie Gallagher, was prosecuted for murdering an ISIS fighter. Found out he was not guilty. Someone else actually admitted to it in court. But I visited him every weekend, and for 9 months when he was incarcerated for no reason apparently. And it was to him, that was the hardest thing he'd ever been through, is the fact that he thought people in his community had abandoned him. Lack of loyalty. And I'm not saying we commit war crimes or nothing, but obviously he was found not guilty and he did not do what they were claiming he did. But the betrayal was the hardest thing for him, because he had been downrange. That was his 8th deployment to combat. He was fighting over Mosul, which he'd fought for a decade earlier, a decade and a half earlier. So he's fighting in the same streets. And the prosecution, which from his attorney, his original attorney crew, they told me, and they've been doing this for 25 years, that we had prosecuted more military people for war crimes since 9/11 than we have in the history of America of all wars combined.
Which is crazy.
Which is absurd. I mean, it's absurd.
Right.
Because war doesn't change. The rules do, and people's concepts of warfare does. And not to get it's not necessarily
and
topic,
we have more cameras there, and
we do. And people's become very sterile. Collateral damage, surgical strikes, all these sterile words. It's still gross. I mean, collateral damage is just unaccountable killing. If you see kids blown up in the street, that's what it is. And so I have a hard time personally having anyone really judge people like our guys and that haven't had some experience or some, just some empathy for what they go through.
Yeah, interesting that it's the same people that send us overseas to protect them, that then they want to say, oh, wait, that's not me. If it's not perfect, not my fault.
And the most as a civilian who writes about guys that go to war and who sees the needle in the damage done, if you will, the real tolls of war by the guys that do it, and the stuff they've sacrificed both physically and mentally, and the stuff they've done for this country, it pisses me off no end to see these armchair, if you will, people coming in and saying, well, Clint Lawrence, Eddie Gallagher, these other guys that I fought for, that say, well, this could have gone differently, and you could have made this order on to engage the enemy or whatever at this point in time, and you could have done this or you could have done that. Let me tell you something. If you should do that, you will degrade the ability of this country to do war, which we must have that ability to if you will, take on our enemies so much that you might as well just open up the borders and say, hey, anybody want a free meal? Bring it on in. And we've got a group of people in this country that are willing to do that. Yeah. But I felt like the rules of engagement that were put on by the Obama administration during that administration's running of Iraq and Afghanistan were completely absurd. And I believe that's one of the biggest reasons we led to these prosecutions and all this BS that took place as a result of it. And I think that if you try to put those restrictions and those crazy rules, guy can take shots at your guys, drop the gun, turn around and run the other direction, and you can't shoot at him. I mean, stuff like that. It's like, really? You're going to lose.
It's clearly flanking.
You're going to lose.
Well, you touched on that last administration, because the administration with Senator Gillibrand, actually, because when I was following Eddie's case, that's when the shift turned where the JAG Corps became weaponized.
Right.
And that was the shift. They started prosecuting heavily because, commander's intent, and we use this in the military, right? Leader's intent, whatever you want to call it, goes throughout the organization. If you say, hey, look, because Gillibrand and the last president, we're trying to get rid of sexual assaults, which I understand. But when you give open intent like that, we need to put people to justice, whatever. It becomes a tidal wave. And now they're like, okay, our job is to put these people in prison. It becomes us versus them. And that's what they did with Eddie, and that's what they've done a lot. And it's unfortunate. They had about over 24 prosecutors and assigned against Eddie, researching 24/7, and they gave him like a new attorney out of JAG school. Yeah, he would have been in jail had we not raised about $1 million for him.
And they were sending bugs. They were sending bugs into the attorney's the information that was being sent to the defense counsel, and got caught.
But it's not a crime.
Yeah.
Not in the military, it's not a crime.
To send literally,
crazy.
they were sending mining craft into the messages that they sent to somebody else. They were sending it with the messages they were sending to the Defense Council so they could monitor who actually got those messages.
And he admitted to it. The
100%
prosecutor
illegal.
said in court, yes, I did do that. The judge was like, oh, you're dismissed. But they didn't put him in jail.
No, I know.
He's a civilian attorney now out here in San Diego, is my understanding.
Yeah, it's obscene. Just obscene.
It is.
Yeah. So I guess getting back to guts and the concepts here, we're kind of rounding this program on. What do you feel overall when you're done with what you guys do with the concept of guts? What did you want to leave that person with, Ed, from your perspective on what you're trying to accomplish?
The program, we call it Sealpreneurship, like entrepreneur, seal, kind of mix, but it's intrapreneur. And we give them a diploma, an actual diploma called a PhD in me. And what we want them to do is to be able to understand that accountability, own their own life. Whatever it is, from the point, this point on, is you are in charge. You're, that's self-reliance. That, we teach them how to use resources and how to do a lot of different things, but at the end of the day, it's you. And we want them to have that feeling, no matter if they are a plumber or a doctor or whatever they go into, they can take that skill set. So those skill sets we teach and take it anywhere you want. And it's that self-reliance piece is a big one because these kids, a lot of the kids, we're working with, and I work with kids overseas as well, in Ghana and other places at orphanages. But these kids, it sounds strange, but they actually start to feel entitled because the government comes in and they have lawyers, they have counselors, they have all these things, and this mindset becomes like, I'm a victim, and all these things. Like, no, man, this is yours. This is your life. You take control of it. Be grateful that you're alive. Because gratitude is one of we have it. Attitude of gratitude is kind of the expression we use with them. We create habits of habitudes, but we teach them every day to be grateful. Be grateful, because that's probably one of the most positive things. It's like patriots. If you look at what I think sums down to what a patriot is a person that's grateful for what they have. The people that are not grateful for what they have, you hear them complaining all the time about America's not great. Well, it's not perfect, but it is great. Yep. So that's, if you focus on gratitude, your life will be better. And these are the kind of things we take the kids with.
And I think that's for my way to sum this, if you will, episode up with our show and with the attitudes that we're trying to do here in Teaching Freedom, is that's exactly it. I think that in a nutshell, what Ed just said is exactly it. You have to take responsibility, but you're responsible for your own freedom. At the end of the day, you as an individual are responsible for your own actions and for your own freedom. And if you look at it like that every day, we're not going to have this me too, give me more society attitude that we're seeing so often now in America become the prevailing viewpoint, which leads us to socialism, and I think to very bad things that we've seen in history, because ultimately socialism doesn't breed those values. Socialism says the government will take care of me no matter what, and as a result, and you run out of the money and the things that you need to do, it always fails. And we've seen it historically.
It's human nature.
It's human nature. At the end of the day, because you're not taking responsibility for your own actions.
I agree. So we'll wrap it up here. Thank you for watching and listening to Teaching Freedom. We're here with Ed Hiner. His book, Guts, is available for pre-order on Amazon, coming out April 2021, which when I first saw it, I was like, oh, wow, that's a long way away. But no, we're rounding the bend. It's coming up quick. So besides ordering a copy on Amazon, how can people get a hold of you, Ed?
Oh, you can go just on my website, edhiner.com. You can info me there.
Thanks for your work with the kids, Ed. I think I really appreciate seeing guys like you out there doing that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Teaching Freedom.